Buonasera a tutte, buonasera a tutti e grazie di questa grande partecipazione. Grazie soprattutto alle nostre meravigliose ospiti di questa sera. Voglio accoglierle con un grandissimo applauso. Una è un'amica, Kati Piri, che è portavoce sull'immigrazione e l'asilo del suo partito, una delle figure più promettenti del partito laburista che da poco si è fuso in Olanda con i Groen Links ed è in questo momento impegnata in una campagna elettorale molto difficile per le elezioni politiche che si terranno alla fine di ottobre, per cui voglio che facciamo a lei, a tutto il suo partito, a Frans Timmermans un grande in bocca al lupo. E poi la gioia di ospitare qui una donna che è stata per noi grande ispirazione mentre era prima ministra del suo paese, la Nuova Zelanda, e ha ispirato le progressiste e i progressisti oltre ogni confine. Jacinda Ardern, grazie di essere con noi. Accoglietele con tutto il calore di cui siete capaci. Grazie, grazie, grazie. Ora ovviamente io continuerò in inglese la conversazione con le nostre ospiti di oggi, ma prima c'è una cosa che voglio fare in italiano. Voglio ringraziare il PD di Milano, il segretario Capelli, la segretaria Roggiani, voglio ringraziare soprattutto però tutte le nostre volontarie e volontari che tengono in piedi le nostre 500 feste dell'unità come questa. Grazie. Grazie perché siete voi il cuore pulsante della nostra comunità. Senza la base scordiamoci le altezze. So, I was thanking you for the gift of being here with us today, and I wanted to start with you, Jacinda, asking about what you're doing right now. You're touring the world with your new book, and you can see, and you can find also here the book. We just discovered that the Italian version is like 100 pages longer because, you know, we like to use more words. So the book is a different kind of power. Why do you think there is a need for a different kind of power and leadership? And what kind of leadership is that?
Well, first of all, grazie mille. Thank you for having me. It's so wonderful. So wonderful to be here with my friends next to New Zealand, one of my favorite places on earth. So thank you for having me. You know, my answer is simple. Why do we need a different kind of power? Because look at the world. Look at the world right now. You know, I think when young people look at politics, they wonder where our humanity has gone, and you need only look at the polycrisis we have, war, a lack of focus on climate change and these existential crises, the fear and uncertainty that comes from financial insecurity and technological disruption. At the core of empathetic leadership is people. And right now in all of these crises, we need to be reminded that politics is an act of public service and we are there to serve the needs of our people. And yet we feel this drift, I think, from those who hold power currently and what people need in their daily lives. So that's why, in my mind, we need to be out there championing an approach that is focused on people and an approach that is focused on kindness and empathy.
And do you think it is enough to be a female leader to embody a different kind of leadership? Just asking for a friend.
Yes. So, I mean, my question to anyone, to any audience, let alone an audience perhaps of like-minded people, would be what did you teach and value when it came to raising your children? Or when it comes to being a role model to others, what do we value? No, we value curiosity. We value bravery and courage and generosity. And we also value kindness. We teach our children to be kind. Why When it comes to political leadership, do we interpret kindness to be weak? In the world we live in today, the decision to act with empathy is an act of courage and bravery. It takes strength to be in politics. It takes even more strength to be an empathetic leader. So I believe these values are not just values that are held or should be held by women. We should expect them of all of our leaders.
You founded a fellowship field to strengthen the network of empathetic leaders and connect women that are engaged in politics all across the world. Can you tell us a little bit more about it?
Do you know, I think that in politics right now we have this very singular focus on a particular style of leadership. And I think it's one of the reasons that we see increasingly people are disengaging from politics. And we see in the global surveys, there's a survey that's been happening internationally for many years, the Edelman survey. It tracks trust and confidence in politics, and it has found that not only have we got very low levels of trust in politics right now, we have a sense of grievance. People feel a grievance towards our political leaders because they feel that disconnection. And we can see why. The type of politics and leadership they see daily in the media is often in the extremes. People who are using inflammatory statements of blame to try and attract voters and to also keep the spotlight away from them making a difference in people's lives. And so the reason that I'm working on empathetic leadership in part is to model that an alternative is not only viable, it can be successful, but also because I want to put a spotlight on those who are in politics to serve people, not to serve themselves. And there are good people still in politics. 2 of them are on the stage here. I don't want people to lose hope.
Kati, in the Netherlands, we have seen the failure of the extreme right of Geert Wilders to form a government. There was chaos for months in your country, and then to keep it in charge for more than a year. Now you're facing this very important national election in the Netherlands on the 29th of October. So what is at stake for your country?
Thank you, and buonasera a tutti. That's all you will hear in Italian from me. Grazie. Yes, it's going to be important elections. Of course, every election is always important, but I have the feeling that there's a lot at stake at these national elections in the Netherlands. We had, for the first time, the most far-right government ruling the Netherlands since the Second World War. And to be very honest, for most people, this meant that everything stood still. There were 4 parties, including Geert Wilders as the biggest party, trying to govern the Netherlands. It was chaos every week. And they did not manage, with big promises they made to the electorate, they did not manage to do anything on the promises they made. They didn't manage to put any law into legislation. So actually, to be honest, Ellie, for a lot of people, time stood still. And if you're rich, it's fine if time stands still. But if you need good education, if you want something to be done with climate change, adaptation, if you want something to be done with housing, one of the biggest problems in the Netherlands is that young people cannot, they're still living with their parents, they cannot move to an affordable housing. You cannot allow your country to stand still for years. So that's one of the biggest issues. Another issue which is at stake is democracy itself. Democracy itself. We have seen when the far right is in power, they don't respect parliament, they don't always respect how things were done for many years. They tried to do emergency legislation. Emergency legislation bypassing parliament. And of course, the blame politics, that is the selling point of the far right, putting people up against that other. And perhaps as a last point, one of the saddest things is that, a lot of right-wing parties said, Geert Wilders became the biggest, let him govern, his voters will see he doesn't deliver, and then he will be less popular. The opposite is true. The opposite is true. Actually, right now you only have one force on the right, which is the far right. It's only the far right. And the trust of people in politics in the Netherlands is now down to 4%. 4%. So it's the trust of politics being able to make a change in people's life. That's what's at stake at this election. And I very much hope that all the democratic parties will take this very seriously and show that a different type of politics is possible, a way of politics where we can move forward and no longer standing still.
Jacinda, you have been the leader of the Labourist Party in New Zealand and were elected Prime Minister for 6 years of mandate. What are the policies you managed to implement that you're most proud of? And at the same time, what is instead a difficult choice or moment that you remember during your time in charge?
Yeah, I remember very early on in my political career, I was in Parliament for 15 years. And I remember early on, at the beginning of a Parliament session, we were all asked to give a minute's silence because a past Member of Parliament had passed away. And the first few times that happened, I knew the people because I loved politics. But I remember the first time I didn't know the name of the person I was standing for. And it was a reminder to me that your time in politics is a moment in time. It will pass. And it's not about what your legacy is with your name on it. It's about the policies that stick. And to make a policy stick, people have to believe in it. They have to cherish it. They have to love it. They have to make sure that no one takes it away from them. And sometimes it means building consensus for those policies. So the things I'm proud of are some of the things that we did on climate change that we managed to get the opposition to vote for. I'm proud that we managed to ban military-style semi-automatic weapons in New Zealand and that the opposition voted for it. I'm proud that we passed child poverty laws and that the opposition voted for it. I'm proud of the things that I hope will last beyond me. Those are the things I'm proud of.
You mentioned that you managed to set a high ambition on fighting climate change. We remember that. We remember you passing very strong climate legislation. We were taking inspiration out of it. I remember that I was in a campaign for Emilia-Romagna region at the time, and we were saying, look, we have the same population, quite the same GDP per capita. We have to do the same. And so there was, a verification to check out if it was true that we were the same and we could do the same as New Zealand. But how would you explain something that also me and Kati have been working on for years when we were together in the European Parliament, that social justice and climate justice are deeply interconnected? How would you explain that with concrete examples, also from what you have done in New Zealand?
Well, I have to say, it's a different debate in my country. In my country, we are not having a debate about whether or not climate change is real, because we are deeply climate affected, and our neighbours are deeply climate affected. We are a Pacific nation. One of the realm countries of New Zealand is a set of 3 atolls called Tokelau. I visited one of those atolls and I stood at the edge of the atoll as the leader of that atoll showed me a graveyard where they had buried their people, that New Zealand had helped build a sea wall to protect the gravesite, and only after a few years it was gone. Their atoll was washing away. And when you think about it from that perspective, from the perspective of those where this is not a debate about what will happen in 50 years' time, it's happening now. Tuvalu is trying to get the international community to allow them to still be defined as a nation state if they don't have land, because Tuvalu will be one of the first islands to go. So in my country, we absolutely understand that if you don't have a home, you literally don't have a home, you are a refugee. If you can't insure your property anymore because the weather is so changeable that no one will flood protect you, or landslides increase, or your crops are lost. Climate change affects people's lives and livelihoods. So the debate we're having is how fast do you go and how much responsibility do you hold? Now, as a progressive, my view is always a collective one. No one should be off the hook. We all have a responsibility. There is no geographic boundaries when it comes to this issue, because what you do here affects us at the bottom of the world. This is a time for progressive values, because it will only take that collective approach to solve the climate crisis.
Kati, we were together in Utrecht in July to celebrate a historic congress that sealed the merge, la fusione, of your Labour Party with the GroenLinks. Can you tell us what brought your parties to that decision, and how did it change your political vision of the future?
Yeah, it was a nice congress. Look, I think it started already 25 years ago that members of our parties were talking with each other, especially when we were in opposition, like perhaps we should do a merger. But then every time that the Labour Party went into government, there was no such interest anymore for merging with the Greens, who were in the opposition. And I think if you look, Ellie and me, we were in the European Parliament, and who were the allies of Labour always in the European Parliament when it came to whether it's fighting for climate change, but also whether it's fighting for raising the minimum wage, for affordable housing, for all those social justice issues. Our natural allies have always been the Greens. But nationally, the Greens and Labour Party were always the ones competing with each other for votes. We were always fighting each other for votes. In the Netherlands, we have 15 political parties in parliament, and the last parliament even had 19 parties in parliament. And this is where, 4 years ago, a couple of us said, it's enough. It's enough. The moment that for the European Parliament elections, they published 30 questions which each party had to fill in. And the Greens, separately from the Labour, we all filled in the same answers to 30 questions. So they had to make up a 31st question to show the difference between the two parties when it comes to policies. And this is the reality. It's always you're fighting for the same votes rather than uniting. There are so many issues which we have in common, and the fight we need to do today is so much bigger than this bickering on the left. And it's always the leadership which has a problem with these type of... PD has been through it, right? The Parti Democratico has been through making sure that left parties unite. Ellie is, I think, the example of how you try to align against the far right in Italy, all the left-wing progressive voters. And the funny thing is that the first time we had a vote of our members, whether they want these two parties to merge into one, above 90% of the members said yes. And every vote we had since then was above 90%. People want to have a united left which is fighting for their livelihoods. And this is where, after the far right won the last national elections, we had the European elections. And we went in it together with one list, with one program, as one united party, and we won that election. And I very much hope the end of October, we will also show at the national level that united, we stand strong, whether it's in Italy or whether it's in the Netherlands. This is what we should be doing.
Brava. I couldn't agree more, Kati. And you know, also our party comes from a merge of important parties of the past. And the challenge was to put together different political cultures that now are feeding us, the new generation, who keep together all the different political culture, the socialist, the Catholic democratic culture, but also the communist culture, the democratic culture. So we are now seeing, and you see, and when we say hi also to the Giovani Democratici, because they are now standing up as the generation who come up from the merge. And it's working. But I think that unity is important also for another matter. And we are happy to be able to say and to welcome you today in the Festa Democratica di Milano, la Festa dell'Unità, by saying that we managed in the last weeks to build the same progressive coalition in all the 7 regions that will go to vote. And it hasn't happened for 20 years because we believe in unity to fight the rights and what they are doing to our country. Jacinda, talking about party organization. In your book, you describe one moment after the primaries for the leadership of the party where your candidate lost by 1%, and you mentioned that under the new leader, your team was newly disciplined, and all the leaks that had destabilized the party over so many years calmed down. Asking again for a friend, how did you do it?
Yeah, and just to say that, again, I spent 9 years, 9 long years, waiting to do something useful in politics. Being in the opposition is so hard. It's so hard, and people get restless and they get frustrated. And that's when people are restless and frustrated and waiting to be useful and to make change. Sometimes they start fighting amongst themselves. And sometimes that leads to leaks and destabilization and the undermining of leaders. Well, when that starts to happen, I have one question that I put to any of my colleagues or any party movement or any party membership or wherever the problem may be existing. The question I ask is this: why are you here? If you are here because you like to play politics, if you are here because you like the cut and thrust and you like the games, then you're in the wrong place. And people will see it. The public will see that you are there for the art of politics and not to serve them. More that you fight amongst yourselves, the less you are fighting on behalf of the people that you are there to serve. You will bring yourself down if you fight amongst yourselves. So always ask the question, why are you here? And if it's not for the people, then move on.
In your book, you also...
Blunt? Is that too blunt? Is that too blunt?
In your book, you often talk also about the so-called imposter syndrome.
Yes.
This is something...
The idea of imposter syndrome?
Yes.
Does that translate?
Yes,
Okay.
la síndrome dell'impostore.
Uh-huh.
And this is something women experience in all different roles and jobs we have. How did you learn to live with it while bearing the responsibility of ruling your country?
You know, I think the main point you make there is, how did you learn to live with it? People often ask me, how did you overcome it? And I don't know that you do. You know, if you have ever doubted your ability to do a job or wondered if you're the right person, then that's our version of imposter syndrome. And I have no magic to share on how to get rid of that. But what I do know is this thing that we treat somehow as being a weakness. Maybe it's not. Because anyone who has ever doubted themselves, they'll do something differently because of it. They'll prepare, they'll research, they'll anticipate risk, they'll bring in an expert or an advisor or someone who could make sure that they have all the information they need to make the best decision. They will bring humility to leadership. And maybe that's what we need a little bit more of in these times. So I think my position changed. I don't see imposter syndrome as a weakness anymore. I think actually it's a strength. So that's the only advice I can offer.
Kathy, when we met in July, there was, let's say, a tough debate around your stance, your position on Gaza, when you rightly proposed an embargo to stop selling weapons to Netanyahu's government. What was the impact of that position, and did it put pressure to change the position of the right-wing government?
Yes, I think we all are witnessing one of the biggest war crimes that we can see on a daily basis on our phones, when we enter the television, when we watch the news. And there is no leadership standing up and saying no, and this is enough. And this is a problem we are facing all over the world. So when we organized our Congress just the week before, I handed in a motion in Parliament calling for a full weapon embargo to Israel. The right was furious, and they were attacking us for days before our party Congress. But how can anyone explain to any country, that we would be sending weapons to a country committing genocide, to a country committing ethnic cleansing? We would never do that with any country. So these double standard, why we are doing that with Israel, is the double standard of the right. It's the double standard of the right. And I think you see it all over, not only in Europe, I think also you see it in the United States, that the public, the people in the country, are much more critical than the politicians. I have never, in the 11 years that I'm in politics, I have never seen a topic where there's such a gap between what the people expect from their politicians to do and what politicians are doing. So yes, we had, just like here in Italy, I saw the brave people going on the street saying it's enough. There's a red line that we are not willing to cross. And we had the same in Holland. We had 200,000 people on the streets in The Hague. We're a smaller country than Italy, which was our biggest demonstration in 25 years. So the public is demanding from the politicians to act, to come with sanctions, because if you don't sanction it, you're approving it. So that's why, according to us, the minimum we should be doing is a full weapon embargo, stop trade with illegal settlements, recognize the state of Palestine, and make sure that those people who are responsible are being brought to justice. And perhaps, Ellie, if I can add one sentence. Because it was a tough debate in my party, and we had some members who left the party because of this stance. And I fully understand whatever your personal position is, especially if you're a Jewish Dutch, how difficult it can be sometimes that people are blaming you for what Israel is doing. So we had more or less 800 people who left the party after that Congress, but we also gained 20,000 new people after that party Congress who said, this is the movement that I want to belong to, and we are now the biggest political movement in the Netherlands.
And let me add to that, in these days, there is probably the biggest humanitarian mission starting spontaneously from the bottom that is leaving for Gaza, the Global Sumut Flotilla, and we stand in solidarity with the activists, and we want the European governments and the European Union to protect them because they were threatened. And we have to say that what they are doing is trying to break the illegal block of humanitarian aid and food to Palestinians, but they are only doing what the governments of the European Union were supposed to do. And we are proud that among thousands of activists, there will be 4 members of the Italian Parliament, including 2 members of Partito Democratico, Arturo Scotto, Annalisa Corrado, and we say buon vento, because they represent all of us. And let me also add that we are fed up with the hypocritical words of our government while they vote against the shy sanctions that the European Commission has proposed for the Israeli government. We will continue, as we did in the big rally in Rome in June with 300,000 people, we will continue to ask sanctions for the crimes in Gaza and in the West Bank by the government of Netanyahu and his ministers, who are openly declaring the objective of canceling Gaza. Gaza belongs to the Palestinians and will never be a resort for rich people like in the terrible videos in the social media of Donald Trump. That's why we will insist for the full recognition of a state for Palestinians, because they have the same right as Israelis to exist and to live in freedom and security in their own state. Jacinda, your leadership gives us hope and enthusiasm, and your time as Prime Minister inspired lots of women and girls beyond any border, including myself. But we are in times where the international network of nationalists seem to be winning in many countries. With the return of wars, and the criminal war also in Ukraine by Russia, and what is happening in Gaza, in the other wars in Sudan, and the attack to multilateralism by the extreme right and the attack to fundamental rights of people and communities, what is the way forward for us progressives to push another vision for the future and to beat them?
Two really important things I think that as progressives we need to remember. The first is, I hear this all the time, the populist movements, they're winning, the far right, they're winning. What is winning? What is winning? Because yes, you might hold office, you might increase the number of seats that you hold, but if along the way an increasing number of people become disenfranchised, stop showing up to vote, stop believing in your institutions, their grievances grow and their belief in acts of violence as a way to make change increase, then where does that leave our societies? Fractured. It leaves our democracies unstable. No one wins as a result of that kind of politics. So what is winning? It has to be more than just taking power. It has to be the way that we treat, support, and uphold our democratic institutions. So we have a job to do, not only to model what is important about the way we do politics, but also what we do when we have power. We have to answer the call that people are leaving with us to respond to them. Kati is right. Ali is right. That sense of grievance and disenfranchisement is because the distance between what politicians are doing and what the public are asking for is growing. People may say that what impact does a war in the Middle East have on your daily lives? Well, if people look that war is not ending, then they believe that humanity in politics is gone. And when they believe humanity in politics is gone, they stop voting, they stop believing in democracy, and they become indifferent. And we have seen what a world where people are indifferent to humanity looks like. So as progressives, I think we need to remember what is winning and who are we here to serve when we are in office. We must remind people that there is still humanity in politics. A good place to start is ending the war in Gaza. The next place we go to must be improving people's daily lives. Remind people why we are here.
Reading your book, and I suggest to all of you to do it, but I don't want to spoil anything, but there is one moment in which you...
A spoiler alert, I became Prime Minister,
yes,
and then I quit. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
But when you become Prime Minister, you're in the car, going to the swearing in, I think.
Yes.
And you talk to a journalist, and he asks you, what do you want to do? And you have all the set of policies in mind of what you were been working for years to do on social issues, on child poverty, on climate, but you give a different answer. And you say, bringing back kindness. So my question would be, why should bringing back kindness be a consistent part of our political program while facing and competing with these shouting opponents? In other words, because it's the same question we hear in Italy sometimes, what would you answer to those who say that in order to win, we should shout like them?
Well, just because people are used to seeing that does not mean it's the kind of system that we have to perpetuate. We don't have to keep doing it. I remember when I came into Parliament, I thought, well, I'm a bit thin-skinned, I'm a bit sensitive, I don't cope very well with the shouting and the heckling. I'm just not going to be a very good politician. And so I went in believing that I would never be a leader, nor did I believe that I had the right skills to be a leader because of the kind of leadership I had seen before. That's what people will believe a politician is until someone shows them that it's not. until someone like you or someone like you is in a leadership position and shows people that you can be a politician and you can value kindness. So to both of you, I want to thank you for role modeling that. I want to thank you for showing people that you can do politics differently despite years of doing it one way, and for building a movement. You don't know how many people out there will look at you and come into politics believing they can do it differently because of what you're role modeling. So as we would say in New Zealand, kia kaha. Kia kaha means keep going, stay strong, keep doing what you're doing, and you'll be making a huge difference to a huge number of people.
We had a good teacher then. Kathy, how important it is to unite our voices and forces across the borders as progressives, because they're doing it and they're effective. The rhetoric of hatred of Trump, Netanyahu, Orban, Meloni, Salvini is strengthening each other with the same enemies. They need enemies every day so that they don't have to answer to the fact that they're not delivering for the daily problems of our citizens. Think about minimum wage. Think about healthcare, for example. But how important it is for us to learn to stick together and to show that we share the same vision. I remember when we first met, we went together to Lampedusa to show that another Europe is possible, also in terms of welcoming refugees. And we were coming from different countries. We were speaking different languages, coming from different backgrounds, but we were sticking together, and that was powerful. As we were together in Fields, as we were together in Utrecht, and as we will be again at the Congress of the Party of the European Socialists that will take place in Amsterdam in October before the election. So how important it is for you to show that we share the same vision in order to strengthen each other?
Well, first of all, you're all welcome to come on the 19th of October to the PES Congress in Amsterdam. So happy to see you there. It will be less sunny, though. I think when it comes, Ellie, I don't know how it was when you joined the party or when you joined the party. For me, one of the key issues as a person who was born behind the Iron Curtain, in 1979, I was born in Hungary. My father had fled Hungary in communist times because he didn't have any opportunities to study there. He didn't have any opportunities to develop there. So he was 16 when he fled through Austria to the Netherlands. So for me, it was always key that democracy is not something to be taken for granted, and that you need international solidarity in order to beat also repressive regimes. And this is where, for me, when talking, like I told you, we have 15 parties in Holland, 6 of them are on the left, or 7 of them are on the left, but there's only one party which from the moment that we started the labor movement has always been an international movement. And that's the reason why I joined the Dutch Labour Party and not one of the other parties, because we need international solidarity, whether it's for workers' rights, the tradition of the movement is for workers' rights, whether we look at today's challenges when it comes to climate change, when it comes to standing up against bullies like Donald Trump and showing that a united Europe, a progressive Europe, is much stronger and can rely much more on its own confidence, more than we are doing now, to be honest. So I'm worried about today's developments when it comes to Europe. And like Ellie always keeps saying, why do we know all those names of all the leaders she just mentioned, and we know much less names of the progressive leaders that are making a daily changes in people's lives? So that's why I'm very grateful for Jacinda also for having started and bringing together leaders from European countries, working together, exchanging. That's why I'm very grateful that Ellie, although I know she's very busy in Italy, also made time to come to the Netherlands and to speak also at the Dutch Congress, where she now has a fan club. She's not only yours now, she also now has a fan club in the Netherlands. And this is, I think, what makes our movement strong, is that we are fighting together.
We usually say, Kati, in the meeting of the Party of European Socialists, that we must not leave internationalism to the nationalists, because we have much more in common. For example, the fight that we're doing now across all Europe with our members of the European Parliament on housing, because housing is a fundamental right of people, and the left has forgotten it for many years, at least in this country. Now we have put it back at the center of our political agenda, and people can feel, can reconnect. So, coming to a conclusion, because unfortunately our time is running out, Jacinda, politics can also be a nasty place, especially for women. We all know. Why that? Why that? And how would you share your experience with young activists, female and feminist activists, who are trying to make their way into our political organization that too often are not welcoming for young people and especially for young girls and women? So what would you share of your experience for them that are trying in a way to follow a path?
You know, I'm very lucky that in New Zealand I was the third female Prime Minister, and that when I left office we reached the milestone that 50% of our members of Parliament were women. But just because we had the numbers did not mean the experience was improving. In fact, I think it is getting harder globally for women in politics, and there are a lot of reasons for that. There's just really one thing, though, amongst those many issues that I would want to highlight. My day-to-day experience in politics was still a joyful one. You know, yes, there were extra experiences that I had that others may not have because I was a woman in politics. Yes, that is true, undeniably. But I would hate for anyone out there listening to think that that meant that they should not put themselves forward. If my daughter came to me tomorrow and asked me if tells me that she wants to go into politics, I would say go for it, and I'll be right by your side. Because there is no job in the world that is as privileged and as humbling as being able to be a political representative and change the issues that you see in day-to-day lives on behalf of others. And so yes, we have problems to fix. We have problems to fix. Do not let that stop you from going into politics. In fact, run. We need more of you. And just know that when you do choose to run, that there will be other women there beside you to support you in ways that perhaps we didn't have in the past.
Thank you, Jacinda. Thank you, Kati. Thank you for being here. It was a beautiful gift for us. Let me just finish in Italian, if you allow me. Grazie a tutte e grazie a tutti per la vostra partecipazione. È stato per me un regalo bellissimo avere qui Jacinda, avere qui Kati, due donne il cui impegno continua a ispirare me e tanti altri ogni giorno tra i progressisti europei. Io vi ringrazio anche per l'impegno unitario che stiamo mettendo in tutta Italia. Vi ringrazio perché questa testardaggine unitaria ha permesso, lo dicevo prima, di chiudere la stessa alleanza progressista in tutte e 7 le regioni che sono al voto. Siamo al fianco dei nostri candidati, siamo al fianco del Partito Democratico, ci siamo con le nostre priorità che sono chiare. La difesa della sanità pubblica universalistica dai tagli e dalla privatizzazione di questa destra che qui in Lombardia conoscete molto bene. Non una sanità per ricchi, non una sanità a misura del portafoglio, ma una sanità universalistica come quella di Tina Anselmi, una sanità che curi chi da solo non ce la fa. La difesa della scuola pubblica dai tagli di 6.000 insegnanti, la difesa della scuola pubblica che vuol dire anche moltiplicare gli asili nido in tutto il territorio nazionale. Il lavoro dignitoso a partire dalla battaglia che continuerà contro la precarietà e per un salario minimo, perché sotto i 9 euro all'ora non è lavoro, è sfruttamento, non deve essere legale. E accanto al lavoro le politiche industriali che Giorgia Meloni ha completamente dimenticato. Tutti gli imprenditori che incontriamo, qui al nord come al sud, ieri in Calabria, accanto a Pasquale Tridico, come prima grande questione ci pongono il costo dell'energia. Abbiamo le bollette più care d'Europa, non lo dobbiamo accettare. Possiamo fare come la Spagna, possiamo fare come il Portogallo, possiamo separare il costo dell'energia da quello del gas, che è la fonte più cara, e dare respiro alle famiglie italiane e alle imprese italiane per il rilancio della nostra economia. Se Giorgia Meloni in 3 anni non l'ha fatto è perché forse non ha il coraggio di intaccare gli extra profitti maturati da un pugno di grandi società energetiche a scapito di tutte le altre imprese e le altre famiglie italiane. Andiamo avanti. Lavoro, politiche industriali, diritto alla salute, diritto alla scuola e diritti sociali e civili che per noi sono inscindibili. Sono inscindibili come il diritto alla casa. Sono inscindibili come il diritto a supportare per davvero le famiglie, non con la retorica vuota di chi poi taglia i fondi per i nidi, non protegge l'assegno unico per cui tanto ci siamo battuti. Diritto di tutte le famiglie, perché loro non fanno che parlare di vuota retorica sulla famiglia come se fosse una sola, tradizionale, di cui tanto parlano ma che poi nessuno di loro ha. Suggerirei un po' di cautela. Le famiglie sono tante, Milano lo sa, sono plurali e vanno tutte difese nel contributo che portano alle nostre comunità. Nessuna discriminata e soprattutto non si possono discriminare i loro figli e le loro figlie. Per cui continueremo a batterci accanto ai nostri sindaci e amministratori, che ringrazio per il coraggio, anche accanto alle figlie e ai figli delle coppie omogenitoriali, come difenderemo tutte le altre famiglie italiane. Andiamo avanti così, con valori che guardano al futuro, radicati nel passato e nella nostra meravigliosa Costituzione che, come tutte e tutti noi, è orgogliosamente antifascista. Grazie a tutte, grazie a tutti, e viva Jacinda Ardern, e viva Kati Piri, e viva le feste dell'unità, e viva il Partito Democratico, forza Milano, e viva l'Italia antifascista. Grazie.